I think you really need to decide, do you actually want to grow or not? Because I've met a lot of people that they talk about wanting to grow, but they're not taking the actions to do so. So what I mean by that is if you want to grow, you have to realize it's going to be scary. You're going to make less money, right? You're going to have periods of hardship where you're not going to make as much money, and you need to go all in and spreading your message, right? And you can't be sitting back, because back to my conversation about marketing, if you really love this product or service that you're selling and you really love what you're doing, you shouldn't be afraid to shout from the rooftops about it, right?
Welcome to the Seven Figure Accountant podcast. I'm super excited to have with me today Greg O'Brien. Welcome to the show, Greg.
Thanks, Nick. I'm excited to be here and hopefully add some value to the audience.
Oh, definitely, you definitely will. So let's start off. Tell the audience a little bit about who you are personally and, a little bit about the business.
Yeah, so Greg, I'm based out of Boston, Massachusetts. The journey's been a long one, but we started back in late 2018. So I don't have any cool, unique story of accounting. I went to a school called Bentley out of Boston. It's a 4,000 person business school. Logically, I just kind of, my brain works with accounting. So I went to college there. I played football. It was a great experience. And I was probably one of three people on the team that went accounting. Most people on the athletics, they go for like management, right? They kind of just trying to get through school. But something clicked with me with accounting. And I actually was interested in finance as well. And then my brain just didn't work as well with finance. So I said, you know what, accounting's the path. One track mind. I had this kind of athlete's mindset, right? Of like, whatever I do, I want to really do it well. So graduated school, immediately rolled into my master's while I was working. So I started at a mid-regional firm, you would call it here. It's like a 75 person firm. Wonderful experience, but very traditional looking back on it, right? So a four-person type partnership. And funny enough, when I started there, I think 1 month in, one of the four partners was like kicked out. And I remember going home to my parents. I said, "Is this how it works? Like, there's like one of the owners is getting kicked out," and they're like, "I don't think so." So, went through some of those weird journeys at first, but learned a ton. And along the way, I ended up getting my master's in taxation, finished my CPA. But during that journey, like most people that kind of have that traditional public experience, at some point, I just felt "Mm, something's missing here. I don't like the lifestyle. I don't like how this is like the cyclical nature of it." It was a very, very heavy tax season, kind of January through April. And then summer was slow and then it picked back up. And, you're 21, 22 and your friends are all working in sales and they're like, "Oh yeah, like we work 4 days a week." And I'm like, "I'm working 6, 7 days a week here and I'm making half as much money as you." So it just, I don't know. I had that feeling like a lot of people get after 3 years. I went into private accounting at that point. So I pivoted. I ended up in real estate accounting. Wonderful experience at a smaller developer outside of Boston. I learned a ton. There's a very intelligent CFO that worked there. I just learned a ton about the business of real estate, which I'll kind of relate to the journey now. Did that for a few years, and then I ended up going to a different real estate firm as well, publicly traded, um, which was awesome, right? But as I was, we're fast forwarding here to like 2016 ish. As I'm going through this, I kind of got stuck in the mindset of, I'm in this publicly traded firm now. I see my path. I know exactly where I'm going to be in 5 years. And that's fine, right? Some people want that. I had this itching feeling of, why did I go and study all those nights to get my CPA? I don't use it. Why did I spend all that extra money getting a master's in tax? I literally don't use that. And I got very entrepreneurial, honestly, through self journey and podcasts. I listened to a lot of, like, it might sound gimmicky, but like the Tony Robbins of the world, right? And just different people that kind of like gave me that courage and that strength to say, "Hey, you know what? I can quit and start my own thing because I have the pedigree, I have the mindset to do it." Um, but being the accounting brain and being the son of a police officer and the son of someone who worked in the hospital, like they didn't see that world of starting your own business, right? It's not. I didn't grow up in an entrepreneur's household. I grew up in a very different household than that. So I had to put the business plan together, right? And I'll never forget. I sat down at a weekend at a coffee shop and I created this big business plan of being a tax practice, right? And it's like, I need 1,500 tax returns at $500 a piece, blah, blah, blah. And that's where I thought I was going to do. I said, that's how you make money in tax. And I was like, "Oh, geez, how am I going to get all these clients? We'll figure it out." But long story short, I just gained up the courage. And then that fall, I mean, I'm living in downtown Boston. It's not cheap here. and I had a good career, a steady six-figure career in the real estate finance world. I walked in one day and I went to my boss and he said, "What's up?" And I said, "I quit." And he said, "Really? What are you gonna do?" I said, "I'm starting my own CPA firm." And he's like, "What?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I am a CPA. You know that, right?" And it was just, and that's how it all ended. And so I'll kind of stop there. But that was the journey, right? It's really a journey of kind of discovering that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, not really knowing what I wanted to do, and then falling back on what I knew I did very well, which is accounting.
So how old were you at the time when you made that
So I
decision?
was 28 when I first started. Yeah, 28, and again, it's like a lot of people in your life are telling you, "Why would you do this? You've built this career that you're like pretty steady. You have this health insurance, the 401k, and all that good stuff." And it was almost like I had to prove it that I can do this, and it was absolutely scary. And looking back, I said to myself, "What do I need? I need a computer. I need maybe have to figure out how to have health insurance. I need to pay my rent. Like other than that, what else do I? And if I fail, I'm more than confident I have a resume that I can go back to." I met with somebody at that time that had started a firm about 2 years prior, and he said to me, "Oh, you're screwed." I said, "Why am I screwed?" He said, "The way you're talking, there's no going back." He's like, "The way you've been talking, you're not gonna go back into having a job. There's no turning back." And it was true. Once I got that taste, I was addicted to it.
So when you started the firm, you're obviously 7 years out of university, only, a short stint, if you want to call it that, in actual accounting in the tax world. And then you went out on your own. So well done for being brave enough at that age and taking the step. And obviously you're getting the rewards for it now. But did you have a clear strategy of, like, if you were to look back now, are you where you thought you would be, or did you not really have a strategy other than I just need to get some clients to get some revenue? Like, what were your thoughts when you started? Did you have this longer term vision, or was it more just we'll
It
see
was
how it
it was
goes?
not this vision at all. I get my background is tax, and I thought that that's kind of what we had to do. And my only taste in public accounting was a traditional audit tax practice, which was very heavy on compliance, and that's what I thought I need to do. The journey took a twist in 2019. I'm kind of just figuring it out at the beginning, and had a couple clients and figuring it out. And someone in my network said, "Hey, you should check out this thing called the AICTC, which is the American Institute of Certified Tax Coaches." I said, "What's that?" And they said, "Well, it's more of this academy that you go to, and they teach you about tax planning, tax strategy versus just compliance." And I said, "Okay." So I have a call with them, and they're immediately kind of more of a pressure sales tactic, I'd call it. And again, I have basically no revenue. They said, "Yep, it costs $7,000 to come to this, and we need to know by like 2 days from now." And I was like, "What? Like $7,000 in 2 days from now? Like I don't know where I'm gonna get that money." And I called one of my best friends, and I said, and he said to me, What do you think you can get from that?" I'm like, "Well, if it lives up to the hype, I think I can start selling things at greater value for consulting versus just compliance." And he said, "Well, do the math out. You're an accountant." I did the math out. I said, "I need to sell basically two or three things if I learn the right things here, and I'll do it." Put the credit card down, committed to it. That Going through that academy changed the course of the business, because not just the technical stuff I learned, the model change, right? I came back from that, and I learned that it doesn't have to be a one-off transactional business, which is kind of what I thought it was, in that you can actually sell advisory services to both tax clients and accounting clients and have this pretty cool subscription model out of it. So fast forward from that point in 2019 to 2025, now 6 years later, 5.5 years later, I've gone through 150 iterations of that said model. But I was obsessed with figuring that model out at that time, because I realized we can have a model in which the client volume is low, that has a higher average fee, that's going to be a stickier service than just trying to bulk acquire clients to do their compliance work. So I had no vision of that when I quit my job and I started this. That was purely through that fortunate situation that I fell into.
And that's a great lesson for anyone that hasn't taken the leap yet to start their own firm that's listening to this, is that exact point is one, you took the leap, but then two, you learned that really early. You don't need volumes, you need quality, and you need to add real value. And I think that's
Absolutely,
a
and
huge lesson.
now today I'm very interested in helping people with that. People all the time I talk to, and I interview people all the time. The first question I ask them is, "Tell me more about the business model of your firm." And I actually spoke to someone yesterday for an interview, and they said, like, "What do you mean?" I said, "How does your firm make money?" And they said, I think I have some billing rate attached to me, and I worked 85 hours during tax season. So I think that's how they do it. And I said, okay, let me tell you how we do it. And then the gentleman said to me, I didn't know you could do that. And I was like, why can't you do it? I'm like, who said you can't do it? Right. So I've really got obsessed with that in the industry, trying to educate people that it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be this burnout, 85-hour million tax return life. It doesn't have to be that. Are there downsides the way we do it? Absolutely. But I just think that that part of my journey has been really excited me, right? And I'm continually trying to update and optimize how we do that.
So let's go back then. So you started the business at the end of 2018. You then brought on your first hire within the first real 12 months. Tell us a little bit about what that hire was and what made you go from you doing the work to going, oh, hang on, I actually need to build a team.
So talking about the journey I just spoke about, I realized, okay, I'm gonna need to take on these clients that are more full service in nature, bookkeeping, accounting, tax, advisory, et cetera, everything together. I am naturally a tax person. Can I do some bookkeeping? Sure, I can figure it out. So I was doing a little bit of figuring it out and kind of, winging it a little bit. And I said, wow, I can actually, my sales, the way I'm doing the sales is working. I'm attracting a decent amount of clients here. I am kind of working up to my gills here, and I don't think I can do any more. So I started looking around, and I don't even know the name of the website now because it doesn't exist anymore. But I found this freelancing accounting website, and I honestly scrolled through some profiles, and I said, "Oh, that guy looks cool." I clicked on him. I sent him a message, and his name is Ben. He's been with us for a long time, and he said, "Yeah, I'd happy to help you." So I basically started just outsourcing work to him as a contractor. And over probably a 3 to 4 month period, he said to me that, I am the bulk of of his revenue at that time, right? Of the outsourcing work I was doing. And I said, what is it going to take to hire you? So I flew him up here to Boston, and we had a conversation, and I made that first hire. And that was another one of those leaps, right? Where a lot of people will say, and still do say, hire bottom up, hire the assistants, all that. But at that time, I thought if I hire an assistant, like, I don't even know what to do. I don't know what to give to them, right? Because I'm so busy doing technical accounting and tax work. I just need to get this off my plate. I'm excited by the sales and marketing. I don't have time to do it. So I made a leap, and I don't know exact number, but it was probably a fourth to probably more of my profit went away overnight, right? Going right to this other person. And I had to take that chance. And um, it was the right decision looking back on it, because that did allow me to quickly grow, right, and continue to bring on those hires. So I look back at that part and I say, I probably made the right decision going top down hiring, and I hired him as our what we called our director of accounting back then, right? So hey, you lead the accounting function. I'm getting out of it, right? I'll head the tax function for now. So that was that first hire, but it was an expensive hire for sure.
What would the revenue have been roughly around that point in time? Do you remember?
The revenue at that time, it was probably we were probably doing between 15 and 20,000 a month in revenue, and that's not all recurring. That's a mixture of just projects, just getting revenue in the door, and we probably had 5 to 8 kind of like, recurring type clients there. And those first recurring clients, I mean, I have a special place for them because those were cold emails from me. A funny story, what I used to do in the first year when I started, I would go and here in the States, when a business sets up, they have to list themselves on the Secretary of State's website. I just went to those websites. I would download all of the data, and some people might say like NSLLC. I don't know what that means, but I saw some things that said like Joe's Coffee or Mike's Auto Repair Shop. It had a real name to it. Just Googled them, found out the owner's name, and oftentimes I was guessing their email. I was saying, "Oh, it's nick@gmail.com," and I might be right, I might be wrong. That's all I was doing. And what my entry point was, "Hey, I saw that you set up a corporation. Do you need help with your first corporate tax return?" And I don't know how many I sent, but 4 or 5 said, "Yeah, I haven't thought about that yet. Sounds good." And 2 of those people to this day are recurring full service, high value clients. And you gotta start somewhere, right? And that's kinda how I started, at the beginning.
Yeah, that's awesome. So when you hired your first team member, did you have a vision at that point in time that you wanted to grow a team, or was it more because you just had so much work, you just needed to get some off your plate? Like, was it strategic or was it more just trying to deal with what you had?
So at that point, I did have that vision. I actually do distinctly remember when that person had come up to when I interviewed them, I drew out my future vision on a whiteboard of what I wanted. And one thing I've always been pretty hard on is that I did not ever want that traditional public model, right? Of the partner model, right? And maybe I went a little bit too to the other side at some points with the titles got too crazy, and it was hard to compare titles to different firms. But I set things up saying I want a departmental model, right? I want this like a regular company. I want an accounting department, a tax department, an operations department, a marketing, a sales, etc. Versus just a few partners that have staff under them, right? I just didn't like that. And I wanted to just view it as a regular company. We're just doing work. We're a company. We don't have to have this siloed partnership model. So that was my first vision. And I found the accounting person. And then my next hunt was I got to find a tax person, right, to lead that second service division. And then I can actually go and start doing the sales, the marketing, the operations type of stuff. So that vision had clicked at that time.
So was that your next hire, someone to run the tax division? What did the next couple of years look like? Because I know that you brought a partner on in 2021. We'll talk about that. But before you got to
So
that point, what were the other hires?
So the next kind of branching out was tax. So we did tax next, and then what we decided to do under that, Nick, was develop a model where we said, okay, what do we want like the bulk of the labor to be? And what we call them are we still call them to say project managers. So a project manager would be the most equivalent to like a senior accountant in a typical firm, and their primary responsibility was going to is and it still is being a client advocate and a client communicator and making sure that the workflow gets done. That may or may not include them doing the work. It may include them delegating the work, communicating the work, pushing work up or down, but that's where we want the bulk of the labor to live, right? And that's they're the outward facing part of our firm. So that then became like the bulk hiring, right? Is in the middle of those. And the theory was if each one of those person can handle a certain amount of revenue, we can build that kind of across. What's evolved over time is that, and this is probably a topic you've talked about with other people, was I struggled with should we go with like a department model, a pure department model, meaning accounting and tax, or should it be an accounting department with multiple pods under it, pod based model, right? With leaders of the pods. That was a tough one, right? We went the pod route and then we actually pivoted back to the department route. So there's been a lot of iterations of those type of things, but the things that stayed true is we want that mid level to be kind of where the bulk of the work lives. They are the drivers of this firm.
Awesome. So then in 2021, you brought on a business partner who's non CPA. What, how did that come about? Like, what was the decision to firstly bring on someone else into the ownership scheme and then someone
Yeah.
that
So
isn't actually technical like you?
yeah. So so John, he went to college with me. We played football together, roommates, go way back. He'd helped me set up the firm, right? He's kind of always a part of it from like an advisory perspective, right? And he was in the legal world, and I think he was starting to feel like I don't know if I want to do this forever. Saw what I was doing, so we kind of gradually moved into it, and I think once he saw how the business actually works, a lot of things clicked in his mind, right? Because from the outside, it's hard to know how a business really works, but when you get into it, his brain really clicked of there's a lot that we can probably do better here from an optimization or the kind of optimal perspective. I am more of a visionary, right? On that EOS scale, he is a pure integrator and he has vision too. But we saw that okay, if I can be the one that's kind of driving the vision forward here, I am not the right person to be implementing all the change though, because I move too fast, right? I'm kind of the person that breaks things and kind of keeps going, and he's the person that wants to integrate that. So we were able to work that out where he came in and really he is that kind of integrator role in this firm. He kind of glues it together. If we have a vision, right, he's the one that's going to implement it. What I think the key to success has been bringing that on is that I think it's invaluable to have a perspective, especially at the ownership level, of someone that's not an accountant because I can get if there's a problem with a client, there's a problem with a service issue, yeah, I can probably get involved with and help, right? I shouldn't, but I probably could. I could probably fix that tax return or help with that accounting thing. And I think a lot of accountants are that way, right? That they're technicians. I'm a technician by nature, right? That's what I learned. So I have that ability. He doesn't have the ability to do that, right? He's learned from hearing us talk all day, but he doesn't have that ability versus he has the more of the business perspective. How can I help the people fix their own problem, right? Versus my gut instinct is like, just let me fix it, right? So, having that non-accountant perspective in a business, of an accounting firm, I should say, I think is super valuable. And I think you probably talked to other non-accountants now that are getting into this business because I think they see ways to optimize it that frankly we might have some blind spots too.
So you're only a couple of years into the journey. It's a big decision to bring on, John as a partner and as another owner. What was sort of the revenue at, and what were some of the challenges you were having at that time that you thought, well, other than obviously the non-technical skills and everything you've just talked about then, that helped you to make the decision that that's the right decision?
2021, when he come on, we were about 1.5 million of
Okay.
revenue, and I felt at that time that I was wearing 45 hats, right? We were at that position where I don't know exactly the head count, but call it 12 to 15 total, where I call it the awkward teenage years. I was
Mm,
stuck, right? Like, I would try to make some progress, but then we lacked a lot of that, like, kind of like operational management. And I would get pulled backwards, right? Hey, but XYZ client needs you back here. Oh, go back there. So it was like we couldn't get through that ceiling at that point from a headcount perspective, from a revenue perspective, because I was not the right person for that. I'll call it scale, right? I could grow, I could throw things at the wall and sell and grow, but like I was struggling to scale the company in a sustainable manner where we can sustainably add 25% revenue top line per year, add the 5 to 7 people and keep it all together. And I had to kind of come to the mindset of like that's not my skill set and it doesn't have to be my skill set, right? I have someone here that has that skill set, right? And then why would we not do this? Because you're going to go a lot further together than trying to wing it and trying to put all this other stuff together alone. So looking back, probably the best decision I've made so far because from that point on, 2021, we have grown as fast or faster, at a sustainable method.
And I think that's that messy part of you get to the $1 million, and a lot of firms struggle to get between the 500 and a
Sure.
million. But then once you get over the million, between that 1 and 1.5, what we traditionally see is that, that's where firm owners have scaled their effort. They haven't necessarily scaled their business because they got a team around them, but it's so much of it relies on them. But once you get through that next stage of over that 2 million and you can really start to build the structure out and get some more senior people running parts of the business. But it's messy because you think, I've got this business now, it's doing great revenue, but it still requires so much of me. I thought it got easier, not harder.
I'd say that is looking back, that is still probably the hardest period because the effort of like you're not completely out of the technical work because you're lacking some of that manager that can review work. There's still relationships that you're ingrained to from a client perspective. And then in your spare time, which is the weekends, you're like, "Oh gosh, I still gotta do marketing and get back to those sales things." You're just missing some of those layers there. When I feel like we broke through that, as you just mentioned, the 2 million mark, then we actually were able to bring on operational support, bring on marketing, bring on IT. I was the IT guy before, right? And that's a bad idea. So, we frankly didn't have the margin or the cash flow to do it. And I think a lot of people struggle with that and they
Mm,
wear all these hats. And then you, you either, in my opinion, you either got to go smaller, you get to shrink from that period, or you got to bust through it. Living in
yeah.
that area it's hard.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. So when John came on then, did you reset the strategy then and build a bigger vision? Because obviously you've got quite a big vision, and I think what you're doing is exciting, and I think you're doing what a lot of people aren't. So what happened when he came on? Was there a reset, or was it sort of just business as usual and he got in and just started making
So
improvements?
around that time, there was a reset, right? We had to figure out, okay, where do we want to go with this? And we s- so we started. We both read the book Traction, and we said, "Oh,
Yeah.
this is
Great book.
ingenious. This is so simple. Let's do EOS." So late 21, probably early 22, we went into that kind of self implemented EOS, and then you look back and you say, "Why is this not working?" It's because there's so much there's so much to the principles of EOS that go beyond what the book can tell you
Yeah.
and we just thought we could do it ourselves. But we did instill those principles of, hey, we want a visionary and integrator, and then we need to make sure that there's an accountability chart where each person has a clear function. So we started laying those principles down, and then also started talking about, hey, what are the 10, the 5, the 3, the 1 year, the quarterly goals that we need to shoot for? Although it was a little bit informal, it did kinda set that next hurdle. We eventually did bring on a full integrator or coach, you may call it, for EOS, which is an excellent decision because there's just so much more that meets the eye there, which we still use today. But yeah, so when he came on, we did have to reset that vision of we can probably grow at the same pace, but do it in a sustainable manner versus let's just grow and then things are falling out the back and we got to go pick them up later, right? So it's more of that. Let's have a sustainable effort here and an actual plan of growth moving forward.
So obviously there are some tailwinds through the pandemic that helped you grow, but what's been, I suppose, a big driver of that growth from when you brought him in to today? What's sort of driven a lot of from where the success of how you've got to where you are today?
So we're big believers here, and we've done it since the beginning of just digital marketing, right? So we're very outbound in our marketing efforts, and I think I try to talk a lot with accountants about this because I early on was doing what most people do, right? You're just kind of winging it with marketing. You're throwing some money at Google Ads. You're making a social post once in a while. You send one newsletter out a quarter, and you're like, it's not really working. And I don't know what year it was, but along the way, 2020-ish COVID years, I was in California visiting a friend and I met his business coach and he said to me, first thing he said to me was, what's your YouTube handle? I said, my YouTube handle. He said, yeah, you're an account, you own a firm. I said, yeah. He's like, what's your handle? I go, I don't have a handle. And I was kind of defensive about it. And he said, he's like, what do you do? I go, accounting and tax. So he goes, come here. Shows me this video of this guy talking about S corporations with 5 million views on it. And I said, yeah, so what? That's not that good. And he said, 5 million views. And it just clicked in my head. I said, geez, I gotta show up. I'm not showing up in these areas. And when I started doing a little research about the general market of accounting marketing with social media and outbound, there's just the vast majority don't do anything, like nothing at all. And we're not in an industry that is super competitive there. So we went all in and then we ended up hiring a contracting firm at that point to get us going. But since that time, Nick, we said we're doing daily activities. So we do daily postings on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, everything, right? And I'm a big believer in you don't need to worry about one-to-one acquisition with marketing. You need to realize you're growing a brand presence and just let the power of that go, right? Let Google do its thing, let the search engines do their thing. And a lot of our growth is attributable to just that organic spread of the brand, of the message by showing up consistently. I used to get frustrated when you'd post, your video would get posted and you're like, oh, I have 86 views on the video. Like, what's the point of this? And then someone said to me, well, do you get up and talk to 86 people on a daily basis? And I said, "No." He's like, "Then you should be really proud of that. That's 86 people. What if one person tells their friend that needs an account, right?" Like, I started thinking more like that. It's not about vanity metrics, but showing up consistently every day and doing something. And over time, you get over the fear of the being on video and, "Oh, I sound stupid. I look stupid. This doesn't look as cool as everyone else's stuff." You improve over time. But just being able to show up has been incredible, and it's really the biggest driver of our growth.
Yeah, and when I was doing the research for this podcast, one of the things that did stand out was your marketing, and I wrote down a few words just around. I mean, it's broad. So podcast, book, obviously YouTube, like the video content, even the language you're using on your website, proactive, revolutionizing. And I love how your website really talks about the ROI on tax planning and how that's displayed. Because when I go to your website, I don't look at it and see a traditional accounting firm that, we do your tax work and we do your bookkeeping. I see it about this is the value we bring to you. So if I was a potential customer, I'm reading it as, well, these guys get me and they're going to get me results. The actual compliance and the legal stuff is just what they have to do. Was that purposeful? Because I mean, congratulations, it stands out. Like when I looked at it, I was like, I could tell straight away the type of firm you run.
Yeah, it is intentional, Nick, and it goes back to the concept I mentioned when I went to that conference years back was I tried to learn that, hey, we're not selling you a piece of paper, and if we want to sell paper, it's going to be a grind. And I had to learn how to market and sell the value that we provide. And if someone doesn't think there's value in that, then they're not a good customer for us. So we've always tried to formulate that our marketing content and ultimately when it comes into the sales pipeline of, hey, we're going to provide a value to you. I know that your prior CPA filed your return once a year and did your bookkeeping on December 31st. That's not what we're going to be doing. And this is what's going to be different. And here are the benefits you're going to get. And if you don't like that price, that's okay, right? You're probably not a good fit for us. So we really had to stick to that model and try to avoid the shiny objects that come in where someone's like, well, that's cool, but I want this piece of paper. And we had to get disciplined of we're not selling that paper. That's not what we do here. All the time we have conversations with somebody, they'll say, oh, so you have this recurring model and for a tax advisory and all this. And okay, great. What's it cost? And we'll tell them, we'll say, well, that's 10 times what I paid my prior account. I'm like, well, why did you come here again? They said, because we got no strategy. I'm like, well, I'm telling you, that's what we're going to do. Right. So it takes a disciplined approach to make sure that we're all living that out on a daily basis. But that marketing and that kind of branding messaging is very intentional by us.
So tell us a little bit about the firm today then. So what does the firm look like, the services you provide? Are you in niches? Are you not? Just give us a real
So
high level, I suppose, of the business now.
I'll start with the niche conversation. So always struggled with that. Do we want to get super focused or not? And where we landed with that, Nick, was three verticals, and they're broader verticals. But number one, we call it digital business owners. And what does that mean? It means that it's this, right? We want to work with people that are operating their business remotely and digitally. They might be social media, they might be marketing agencies, digital security, you name it. But they're doing B2B through the internet like we do because we realize that they're going to fit into our model very well versus, say, a construction company, a coffee shop, a retail shop. They're not going to work well with us because that's not how we work and we're not in person with them. So we said, all right, let's focus on digital entrepreneurs or digital business owners, age range 25 to 40 years old. Again, typically that younger demographic is going to have this subscription mindset. So they're not going to be confused or it's not going to be so radical to them that we're offering a subscription versus a one-off tax return. So that's number one. Number two would be what we call venture-backed startups. So being in Boston here, we have Harvard and MIT and all these big institutions. And when I was up and coming, I had a lot of that experience in the R&D world from an accounting perspective. So naturally had some connections there. So we attract back to them very well. So we do a lot of venture-backed startup work. It's just a little bit different type of work because they are high growth and they either make it or they don't make it. And it's a it's a cool thing, but it also there's some more natural churn to that because 3 to 5 years funding could run out or they sell, and when they sell, we're usually out at that point. So that's vertical two, and then number three would be real estate. My background in between public and starting the firm was real estate. I'm a passionate real estate investor. I like it. And it's one of those things that it's not exactly like the other two things we do, but there's a lot of tax strategy stuff here in the US we can do with that. And just a passion thing that I like. So we've grown that quite well. So those are the three distinct channels we try to market to. As far as where the firm's at today from a headcount perspective, we're at about 35 people, maybe 36 now, which equates to probably 25 full-time equivalents. Team is in 15 states here in the US, and then we have a few people in the Philippines, a few people in India, two in Argentina, and one in Colombia. So we're kind of all over the map when it comes to that. Revenue wise, last year we did about 3.5 million. This year's goal is 4.2. So continue to try to grow organically as best we can. But focus right now is really on operations, right? So making sure that the wheels are churning, everyone's consistent with the product we're delivering. And if things need to move around between people or clients need to move around, it's a consistent product that they're getting no matter who's delivering the work. And this might sound simple, but that's probably the most challenging thing we deal with, right? Is consistency and output. As you grow, my control over the deliverables is basically nothing at this point. I need to make sure that I'm setting the vision for the team and for the company to make sure that we're delivering that product and that promise to the client.
And how's your role evolved over the last couple of years? Like, where do you spend the bulk of your time now, and how has that changed, particularly
Bulk
over
of
the
my
last
time
couple of
now
years?
is Yeah, bulk of my time now is going to be in the marketing and sales function. So we have an outsourced marketing contractor, and I work very, very closely with him. I more set the vision for it of, hey, I'm listening to a million podcasts a week. Here's what I think we should try. Here's some things, and kind of setting that broad vision. And then, I set goals for the team. I say, hey, look, we need to hit X number of reviews per month, X number of reviews per quarter. here's how many outbound contacts we need. So I'm setting those broad goals for them, helping execute. I'm really kind of the one that's really optimizing and running that sales pipeline. A couple other guys here help with the actual sales proposals and calls, but I'm really kind of setting that vision there. And then the other thing I say is, my job is really to make sure the vision's clear and challenge people, right? I really think that, like, when you have a strong vision, you need to hold people accountable to that vision and then challenge them, because oftentimes we can get complacent in what we see from an output perspective, and I need to challenge the leaders to make sure, hey, remember that target we all agreed to? That's only 2 years away. Got to pick up the pace here, and I'm going to help you do that. I'm gonna give you all the resources to do that. But hey, let's go for it. Let's go for it together. So I'm really that kind of chief cheerleader, call it too. Like, I want everyone to succeed dearly, but I need to also be the one that's challenging them.
So you've got pretty big growth, and you've had pretty big growth every year. How do you deal with, I suppose, the existing clients and the work you're doing with them versus bringing on new clients? So is it the same team that looks after it? Have you separated and have an onboarding team, for example?
Yeah,
Like, how do you deal with that volume?
good question. That's probably one of the largest challenges we face with the growth, is how to deal with onboarding. Been through a few different iterations, but now we've landed in a function where we do have a client experience manager, and one of her key roles is facilitating onboarding. She's not an accountant. She's not a technical person. And her role is to make sure that client's first 90 days are a home run. So bringing them in, making sure they're very, very clear in what we're doing in the intervals, what we're doing it, sending them the weekly updates. We do a lot of things, like we'll send our clients a lot of our video content along those first 30 days, like when they're kind of like anxious, like, what are they doing in the background? We send them a lot of stuff to get them excited. And then in the background, we do have the incoming service team that's kind of working on getting them all set up and getting them ready to go. And then we eventually have that kind of uh, end of onboarding meeting with the client saying, hey, it's been great. Now we're passing you on to the service team starting now. So that journey's been interesting. We've tried a lot of different things there. And I'm really keen on it right now, because I am a big believer in, from experience here, if you don't do a really good job in those first 30, 60, 90-day intervals, whether they leave right away, the client is gonna probably turn faster than they should. If you deliver that home run experience in the first 90 days, you're gonna have a lot of grace along the way. And what one thing we did recently, Nick, is, we're asking clients in that onboarding meeting in a written form, what does success look like for you in 90 days? And then we're all trying to be hyper focused on that. If they say, I am so stressed out because I'm 3 years behind on my tax returns, or I'm so stressed out because my bookkeeping's a mess, like, that's hyper focus. Just get that one thing done for them, and they're going to be happy. So, um, onboarding will always be a challenge, right? Because the team has competing priorities of work coming in the door and then the existing clients. So managing capacity of that service team is super key. Not perfect how we do it, but we do try to have that pipeline forecast of, here's what's coming, here's what you have. We're going to need to hire at X interval. So um, it's a challenge. I won't lie. That's a challenge, but it's something that we're definitely focused on trying to make as efficient as possible.
Yeah, I love that question. I just really want to highlight that. What does success look like? It's such a powerful question. But just going back to that hiring, the capacity side of it, because a lot of firms really struggle with this. What's your philosophy with bringing on the next hire? Do you bring them on when you've already got enough work to keep them busy? Do you hire in advance? Like, what's the general philosophy you take with making sure that you've always got that capacity so you don't drop the ball and ultimately drop the
General
level of
philosophy has
service?
been hiring ahead, right? Investing ahead. I think it can be difficult because there's times you hire a little bit too aggressively. But we're not ones that are afraid to do that, because if I meet the right person and I don't need that person right now, I'm probably still going to try to make an offer for them. I think I probably failed to mention my other key responsibility here is talent recruitment. Um, like everybody else, it's the hardest thing to do. It's the hardest thing, and part of the whole effort of the daily posting, the branding, is that we got to get our name out there. We got to spread, because then when I talk to that 25-year-old accountant, I can just simply say, "Hey, take a look at our stuff. Like, let me know if you're interested." And if they're coming from that big four or that very, very traditional firm, I want to stand out. I want to attract to them. So part of the whole marketing strategy, Nick, too, is attracting talent. And I always tell people that, I'm like, we're not just doing this to attract clients. We're doing this to attract people that like our brand, our vision. Like, we're not the old stuffy accounts. We want to be different. We want to be new age. So um, the pipeline management of talent is a very difficult thing. So if I see somebody that can be a good fit for our team from a core values and a culture perspective, and we just don't need them yet, I am either going to try to hire them immediately or really, really warm them up and give them a kind of future of, hey, we're going to be ready for you in 3 to 6 months. So hiring ahead for sure. Um, I think what can be challenging though is we are a firm that manages capacity based on revenue, right? So everyone has a revenue target they need to hit from a recurring revenue perspective. W- There's pros and cons to that, right? Which I'm sure you've talked with other people about. Cons, right? You're not time input really isn't a factor. Um, but you really need to rely on your team to speak up about number one, being pushed out of scope. Number two, if the client's complexity is naturally growing. Or number three, if they're struggling with a particular skill set, right? So if we got smart on say, hey, we're confident the senior accountant can handle X dollars of revenue, but one of those three things is occurring without knowledge to us, that person is going to be underwater. So and it may take a little time for us to see that. So we judge our capacity targets based off of the revenue gap. We have X dollars of revenue forecasted. We have X dollars of revenue under management. What's the gap? When do we need to hire? Again, it's scientific, but there's an art to it as well because we have to coach our team to speak up about these things. If they don't speak up and they're not an advocate for what's going on, we are going to assume they have capacity that they don't. If that makes sense.
Yeah, and obviously having a remote team across 15 states and a global team across multiple countries as well, it's even harder to do that than if everyone's in office per se. What was the strategy around, I suppose, hiring across so many different places in America and also adding a global team versus, we're going to have an office in Boston and only recruit locally?
I think once I got the taste of it early on, I said, this works. This is cool. I had someone in Pennsylvania to start. I said, he's doing great. There's no issues. When COVID happened, all of a sudden everyone wanted to do it. And I think we were fortunate that I think we had 3 or 4 people when that all started. And we were already set up that way, right? We had the infrastructure, the IT. I knew how to do it. Um, Talent came onto the market quickly, so I was kind of in the mindset, I don't care where they are, as long as they're good at their job, I'll hire them. And then second, the stigma of having an accountant in Boston and they're in California, it just went away overnight, right there. I
Yeah.
recall I have a client today from the Midwest, and I recall the sales was so hard because he kept telling me, "Well, my current CPA is the next office building over." And I said, "Well, how often do you see him?" And he said, "Well, twice a year." I said, "Well, is it really that different then? You're going to see me through the computer." But it was just harder before COVID. People just didn't feel comfortable doing it. So when that happened, the talent came onto the market, the clients came onto the market. So we were kind of trying to keep up with the pace at that point. And if someone was in Alabama or Texas or Canada, it didn't really matter to me. And it still really doesn't today.
You've had great growth. I mean, since starting in late 2018 with, zero revenue to your forecast this year of 4.2 mil. I mean, that's great growth and it's obviously been an up and down journey. It's never a straight line, as we say.
Never.
It looks and sounds better probably than the hardship of going along that. But
Yeah.
what drives you to continue? I mean, you're young, you've had great success so far. Like what does it look like in 5 or 10 years for you?
Yeah, we are growth mindset, right? We are in 10 years, right? We want to get to 15 million. That's kind of our big lofty goal. But it's not all about like I always tell, it's not about revenue. It's not about the numbers really. It's to me, it's really about can we pioneer what we're doing here and can we create a great place for people to work, right? Where they're happy, they're all making money, it's a win-win culture, and that we're really able to deliver like a really cool service to our clients embracing AI, embracing technology, not being afraid of things that are going to change in this industry. That's really important to me. And just I want to foster a culture where people are excited about this industry and they're not, oh, I got to work 80 hours during tax season, right? That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for an output based environment where people can make their own way. So that's kind of what drives me every single day. And like you said, it is not a linear journey. There's days you're questioning things, right? Like, are we doing this? Do we need to start fresh? You have those moments. But I think that, when I look back at everything right now, if I were, and a lot of people probably think this, but if I were to think I was here 6 years ago, I would have said you're crazy, right? Like my little
Yeah.
business plan said I'd have 1,500, 1040 clients at this point. So it's been a blessing of this. And I do also believe that we as accountants and firm owners really need to stay ahead of the curve with everything that's changing. And I'm not trying to be blind to it. We work with a very young demographic. We have felt pressures from the AI based accounting startups because just we live in that world, right? We compete for some of those same clients. So I'm not blind to that. But instead of resisting that, I'm actually embracing it and saying, okay, how can we work with them to provide maybe a co-service or better service, or how can we just make sure that we're doing some other stuff on the side, right? Like one of our goals for the year is to create our company AI plan. Like, what is Anomaly's AI plan? Because it can't be a sporadic thing. We got to have a consistent plan. So I'm really trying to embrace that future versus resisting. And I think that will lead us to good places.
Well, what motivates you now? You're young, great success, growing a good firm. What motivates you?
I just love business, right? I think, as I've grown through this, there's days where I really love the technical stuff that's in my brain, but I just love entrepreneurship. I really, really do. I listen to podcasts like yours. I listen to a lot of industry-based podcasts, but I also listen to a lot of general business podcasts. And I'm just fascinated. I'm really am fascinated by the world of business. And oftentimes, Nick, I'm saying, geez, wow, I heard of this really cool idea this guy's doing in the marketing world. Like, can we apply that to our business somehow, right? That's kind of how I think, and I'll continue to push the boundaries of what we can do, and not necessarily be bound by, well, this is what accounting firms do, right? I'm really motivated, to learn as much as I can about business and be the best business we can. I don't know what that is. If that's a $4 million business or a $50 million business, I don't know, but I just know I want to optimize it the best I possibly can. I know John shares that same vision with me, so that I get up every single day excited to do this. Um, and then you run into the wall maybe at 9 a.m., but you gotta just keep going. I do have that passion, that energy still to keep fighting day by day.
And you can definitely hear and see that, which is amazing. So what is something that we haven't spoken about that you think sets your firm apart? Like what is something that just makes you're really proud that we just beat our competitors and we are so good at what we do because of this secret sauce? Like what is that for you?
I think one thing that we've done differently that it's not, I'm not going to call it easy to execute, is we have for the last 6 years optimized a model on the tax side of the house where we really don't do any what we call one-time tax here in the US, right? We don't take in clients for a tax return. If you're going to come work with us at Anomaly on the tax side, you are buying a subscription, right? And it's a foreign concept to most accountants that come in to work with us, and it's a foreign concept even to most clients. So there's a little bit of an education process there. What has that allowed though? It's allowed us to have a smaller volume of compliance work during that busy season with a higher ratio of staff. And then someone might say, well, how can you afford the staff? It's because those clients are paying us a premium to have conversations throughout the year. So they have access, right? They're buying access to us. The pain point I saw in the market, Nick, was you ask any business owner that's under $10 million, what's your biggest pain point? I'm paying too much taxes and my accountant doesn't respond to me. Every single person says that. So I said, okay, I'm pretty good at tax and I think I can teach my team some of the strategies and the models that we use. And I don't think it's that hard to get back to people. So that was good. That was a very basic premise that I had. And I said, how do I encapsulate this into this recurring model? Um, so we bundle that together. Now, again, there's issues, there's problems, there's ways that we need to get better at that. But it allows us to get monthly revenue from a client that otherwise would go down the street and buy a $2,000 tax return. We're spinning that into a $5,000 annual subscription. So that is one thing we're pretty happy and proud about that we built. We want to get better. We want to do that better. The second thing is we're really trying to grow the community aspect of things here as well. That's been the last year or two we've been doing that. So on a weekly basis here, we do a long form video for our clients. It's a technical video, right? Technical in nature, but it's high level enough. So hey, you're gonna buy a new piece of real estate, right? Like here's things to think about. We have about 150 of those videos at this point, which developed into what we
Wow.
call a knowledge base. So when a new client comes in, we get them excited and saying, hey, while you're just hanging around here in the background, we have a catalog database here of 150 self-developed videos and articles. Uh, of how to kind of business things, right? That you can do. So really trying to grow that atmosphere and hopefully one day have a system where we can connect clients with each other. They can go do deals. So we're trying to really get that vision of it's more than just an accounting firm. We actually have a community based out of it as well. So that's kind of some of the stuff we're working on and get excited about.
That's super cool because then you can use the AI over top of that, and there's so much. Yeah, that's really cool.
When we talk about these things, I have so many ideas, but then it's like, where do we find the time to do all this stuff? It's just, and again, that's my problem too. I need to always make sure I'm like, am I focused on the right thing, and can I delegate this work to other people?
Yeah, the big rocks. So you talk to a lot of other firm owners. What's the one bit of advice that, as we wrap up the podcast, what's the one bit of advice for other firm owners that are aspiring to build what you've built? What would that one bit of advice be to them?
I think you really need to decide, do you actually wanna grow or not? Because I've met a lot of people that they talk about wanting to grow, but they're not taking the actions to do so. So what I mean by that is if you wanna grow, you have to realize it's gonna be scary. You're gonna make less money, right? You're gonna have periods of hardship where you're not gonna make as much money, and you need to go all in and spreading your message, right? And you can't be sitting back because back to my conversation about marketing, if you really love this product or service that you're selling and you really love what you're doing, you shouldn't be afraid to shout from the rooftops about it, right? And I had to get over that. I'm more of an introverted person by nature, I think, and I'm not one that wants to go out there and shout from the rooftops. But when I've talked to people that were successful in business, and they said, if you think what you're doing is good for the world, good for your community, then it's a disservice if you don't do that. So I always tell people, if you really want to grow, you got to go all in on that brand messaging. You got to go all in and selling yourself or selling your company outbound, and you got to get ready for it because the growth is going to happen, and it is very hard. Growth is very, very hard. So if you want to grow, just prepare for that journey and then reach out. The second thing would be reach out for help. One thing I've consistently done since the beginning, number one, have a coach. Number two, I've always looked up to people in the industry ahead of me. I to this day will call or email people that I follow that I know are at the $7 to $10 million mark. And I just, hey, let's have a conversation. I swear a lot of the stuff they told me about that mid-teen phase and about where we're at now, it's come true because everyone's been through it. And if you can just take a couple nuggets from them and be prepared of, okay, well, I'm hearing that at 35 people, you really need to have an HR function, right? Or I really need to have an in-house sales function at this revenue mark. I can at least take that into account and not be blind. So I really encourage people to reach out to me, to anybody, to give you some of that advice. It may not all come true, but it's going to give you a pretty good head start.
Greg, I could talk to you all day about your business, and your passion just oozes through. So, congratulations on what you built. Thank you for sharing the knowledge you have today and being on the podcast. And we'll put all your details in the show notes for people to follow your journey.
So, Nick, it's been a pleasure, and hopefully we'll talk again.
Awesome. Thanks, Greg. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Nick.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on socials so you don't miss the next episode.